All right, now to our headline guest for the night. I'm joined by the opposition leader, the Honourable Peter Dutton. Peter Dutton, thank you for your time. Obviously, sport's been on our minds this week. Of course, we had the Matildas over the weekend, heading, of course, to the semi-finals in Sydney tomorrow night against England. Meanwhile, you've just announced the Coalition is backing $500 million of community sporting infrastructure. Now, what are we talking about here? I presume better facilities at the grassroots level?
Certainly the case, Peter. So our announcement is $250 million that we believe can help local clubs, like the one that I'm at now, where girls are getting changed in the car park. They don't have shower facilities, adequate toilets, etc. And we think the state and territory governments could match that. And also we're asking that a contribution of 20% be made from the clubs as well. I just think given the level of participation that we're seeing and that we've seen over the last couple of years of young girls going into not just soccer but cricket and tennis and every other code and sport, I don't think the facilities have kept up. And I just think the days of believing that it's acceptable that young girls will get changed in the car park or go into the toilets where the boys are, that's not acceptable. So I think this is a sort of a great tribute, if you like, to the success of the Matildas and the Diamonds and the Ashes team in the UK. And I think it's a better outcome for our economy and for the Australian people than a sugar hit of a public holiday, which ends up costing small businesses $2 billion.
I want to move to The Voice, if I can. 3AW's Neil Mitchell dominates Melbourne radio, interviewed the Prime Minister at length today. He's put out a podcast. I want to play a little of what the Prime Minister had to say. Have a listen.
They know the Uluru Statement from the heart is one page, not hundreds of pages.
But what are the other 25 pages? I've read them. What are they?
What they are is a record of meetings. Some of them, they're records of the big lead-up that happened.
Do you agree with most of what is said in those 25 pages?
I haven't read it.
You haven't read it?
There's 120 pages. Why would I? I know what the conclusion is.
I mean, why would I, says Peter Dutton. I mean, he has committed Australia to implementing Uluru in full if his voice gets up. How can you commit to implementing anything in full if you admit you haven't even read it?
Well, it's a remarkable admission, because what the Prime Minister is proposing here is the biggest change to our constitution, our nation's rule book, since Federation. And that's why a lot of Australians are really, I think, bemused as to why the Prime Minister would keep the detail from them. And I just can't understand why the Prime Minister can't be straight with an answer when it comes to The Voice. Why is the detail being kept from Australians? Why won't he explain it? Why go off? I mean, the interesting line there as well was, when he says, oh, it's not hundreds of pages. Well, I mean, the debate is about whether it's one page or whether it's 18 to 20 or 26. The fact is that that Megan Davis herself has, in speeches in her Parks oration, which I know you've covered on your show in 2018, makes a specific reference to it. And it's not the only time. So just be straight with people instead of trying to be tricky all the time, because at the moment I think Australians are turning off the Prime Minister because they're just suspicious about, well, I mean, if he's being tricky, why? And if the detail's been kept from us, why? Everybody wants to help Indigenous Australians, but I just don't think the Prime Minister's across the detail. We saw it during the election campaign. I don't believe that a Prime Minister like Bob Hawke or John Howard or Paul Keating or Tony Abbott would not be across the detail when they're proposing the biggest change to our constitution in our country's history.